Happy Friday to you. Another week has gone by, and this is the final in the series about red teaming. Just to recap what we've been discussing over the last few weeks, it all starts with an open source intelligence gathering exercise. The information that's gathered off of that is then put into a very compelling campaign aimed at the victims. This is typically through a phishing campaign of some kind, so a very efficient and effective email that comes into an organization to try and catch an unwitting and unsuspecting victim. Once that email's been received and the link clicked, payload downloaded, and machine compromised, at that point it's up to the malicious threat actor as to whether they can escalate their privileges on that device or use the trust relationships between that user and other employees in the organization to move laterally within the organization. Again, as they go, they're trying to look to escalate their privileges to get to a higher level, potentially even admin, if not domain admin, to be able to manage, control, and have access to areas that they shouldn't have. Once privilege escalation has occurred and they have access to areas on the network which should potentially be restricted, it's then a case of having persistence within the network, making sure that they can dial back in at any given time that they prefer to. Once they're housed in there and they've been sat in there for a while, typically they will sit for a long while just to see if they get detected. And if not, they can come and revisit as often as they like. But once they've been in there for a while, they then start trawling around to see what information they can find on the network, whether there's personal identifiable information, financial records, any information that would be deemed as valuable, either out on the open market or to you from a proprietary perspective. Whilst that's all going on, the exfiltration of that data is thought of as well. So whether that be simply trying to package that data up and get it off the network in one shape or form, or actually going on site in a physical capacity and either using a USB stick to take that information off, or potentially leaving a small little device on the network that would allow them to connect in, whether it be over a standard network connection or 3G, and therefore be able to exfiltrate data out of that. As I mentioned in last week's video, the final stage then is the wash up and the reporting on that. This is where our team manages to give you the information about how they got in, the steps that they took, the information gathered during OSINT, the campaign used, who they managed to target, who was susceptible to the target, what areas of the network they managed to get hold of, whether they've still got persistence in the network, and whether they managed to exfiltrate something. All of this information can then be utilized at your side to validate whether your staff members have followed procedures correctly, and as well whether your SIEM, SOC, and other alerting tools have been working adequately as well. This week, as it's the final, I just wanted to talk about some of the jargon, the phraseology used. Firstly is the red team. Obviously, as we've been discussing throughout this series, this is the attacking force. This is us playing the malicious threat actor. This is us coming as a hacker to come and test your network. The counter to that is the blue team. The blue team are your IT operations guys, your IT analysts, your security team, the solutions that you have in place, the alerting and monitoring that you have, which is all feeding information back to you. Again, whether that be through a SIEM solution or a dedicated SOC solution, that's the blue team. Those are the guys that are on defense, stopping the attack from happening. There is a crossover between these two, which is called purple teaming, red and blue mix. Basically, this is where the two teams will actually discuss what the strategy is, right from the planning stage. If our red team can do this, what would the blue team be able to do countering that? Once they've discussed all of this, they run the scenario to see if the playbook of an actual hack would work. What we're also looking for in there is whether there's some creativity that can be generated between the blue team and the red team. The red team can only come at you with the knowledge and experience that they have. Coming from external to the business, they have no knowledge of what's going on in there. So they will find routes and avenues to basically get through. The blue team know what's going on in the network, so they can potentially block as they go. But they will also know some of the pitfalls and failings within the network themselves. They can, in a purple team scenario, share this with the red team, so the red team can test whether that actual weakness is a flaw in the system to be able to report back to the business and hopefully get that remedied. What I also wanted to cover here is when is the right time to do a red team. The right time to do a red team is when you've conducted a number of standard penetration tests. Once you've got a line in the sand with regards to how the network stands from a security perspective, the vulnerabilities that may be there, the operating systems, making sure that everything's patched, everything's up to date and all that kind of stuff, which is what primarily a scoped penetration test is aimed at. At that point, what you're looking to try and figure out is what is the risks to the business if actually hacked. There are far too many cases and news reports that we've been seeing over the last 12 months, if nothing more, that have shown big businesses having data breaches left, right, and center. What you need to understand is that a penetration test as a scoped exercise is not a true reflection of somebody hacking your network. What a penetration test does is it checks to make sure that vulnerabilities in the network aren't easily exploitable. That's fair enough, and that is your line in the sand. But you do need to understand how susceptible the business is to an actual hack. If somebody was to attack you, go out and get the open source intelligence gathering, create the campaign, have somebody maliciously target the organization and circumvent all of the security that you have in place and come from a completely different angle than what you've potentially scoped previously, is what the red teaming is all about. It's the hacker's hack. It's showing you how susceptible you are to an actual malicious attack, but while still having some level of control and trust in the people who are conducting that assessment. I've enjoyed sharing this information with you over the last few weeks. I hope it's been of use. I am now going to have to think of what the next series of videos are going to be, but I'm sure that there's plenty to talk about in cybersecurity. Again, happy Friday to you. I look forward to speaking to you all soon.